a little green tea. Robust green tea. Look at that. Drinking green tea like a man. Before I get started with the ridiculousness of today, a couple plugs. First, a friend of mine is doing a movie called Electric Jesus. He's down in Charleston right now at a film festival. Actually, he's in Beaufort, South Carolina, doing a film festival right now. The script for the movie is featured in the festival. If you check out Chris White and his production company, Paris Mountain Scout, you will see some really cool movies he and his wife, Emily, have done before. She is a co-writer for everything he works on. Fantastic filmmakers. They're doing this project called Electric Jesus, of which I will speak more in the future. Just want to introduce you guys to it and tell you to go follow Electric Jesus on Facebook and on Twitter. If you guys know who Daniel Smith is, Danielson family, Daniel Smith and Daniel and the 9 Fruit Tree, that sweet band, if you remember who they are, you definitely want to get on board, because Daniel, so he, first of all, as I said, they're at the film festival right now. Daniel Smith gave a concert tonight. So that's a sight that hasn't been seen for a while. And the movie is about Christian hair metal from the 80s, and Daniel Smith is composing the songs. What? So the movie is kind of like just a loving ode, tribute, nostalgic trip down the ridiculousness that was 80s Christian hair metal, Petra and Striper style. Just suffice to know that it's a project Christians should want to get on board with, because it makes fun of all the right things, but it's from such a loving perspective on Christian pop culture and all of its glories and ridiculosities. So Electric Jesus, follow them on Twitter, follow them on Facebook. And if you're the sort of person who has at least some hundreds of thousands lying around that they want to invest in a film like this, but really we're talking someone who has $1 million, $2 million, $3 million, more, or you know somebody like that, get in touch with me and I'll get you in touch with the Electric Jesus people, Chris White especially. The other plug I want to give, as we approach the third minute of the video, is my book, Well Met, Poems of Companionship. If you haven't bought it yet, do. That's the whole plug, because I talked too long about Electric Jesus. All right. There's a woman in Seattle. A story came out in the Seattle Times today in which she was the protagonist. The woman's name is Rebecca Morris. Rebecca Morris is a New York Times best-selling author. She writes true crime books. Books like A Killing in Amish Country, Sex, Betrayal, and a Cold-Blooded Murder. Or If I Can't Have You, Susan Powell, Her Mysterious Disappearance and the Murder of Her Children, etc. The Boy Who Fired the First Shot, The Girls and the Horrors of Howard Avenue, etc. So, salacious yet true crime. This is this woman's bread and salt. Now, before I tell you the story that came out in the Seattle Times, I want to read you something from her bio that is vitally important, okay, to understanding this story, to increasing its irony and spreading its tragedy everywhere. Okay. New York Times best-selling author Rebecca Morris is also a veteran journalist who worked in radio and television news in New York City, Portland, Oregon, and Seattle, Washington, and was a freelance writer for the Seattle Times, the Oregonian, People and Entertainment Weekly. Well, People and Entertainment Weekly starts to soften up the hard edges there, but this woman and her bio says that she is a veteran journalist, radio, TV, freelance writing, including for the Seattle Times. Now there's a story out, came out earlier today, from the Seattle Times. Rebecca Morris wrote into the Seattle Times the following note. Hi. Suddenly, there is a Confederate flag flying in front of a house in my Greenwood neighborhood. It is at the northeast corner of 92nd and Palatine, just a block west of 92nd and Greenwood Ave North. I would love to know what this means. She put that in there. Means, quote unquote. I would love to know what this means, ellipsis, but of course, don't want to knock on their door. Maybe others in the area are flying the flag. Maybe it's a story. Thank you. Yeah, so her little journalistic juices start to flow. Not for her. She's going to talk to her friends at the Seattle Times. They're going to check it out. Let me read to you a particular part again, because this is what the video is about. I would love to know what this means, but of course, don't want to knock on their door. So the Seattle Times went down there, checked it out. It was a Norwegian flag being flown by the son of Norwegian immigrants because of the Winter Olympics. Okay, so I don't know what happened today, but yesterday the Norwegians had more medals than anyone else. Yay! So this Norwegian man showing his Norwegian pride, red flag, blue and white cross, so same color scheme. If there had been any wind at all, you would have seen, obviously, that it was not the Confederate flag, but whatever. We can be charitable and assume there was no wind, but we can't, regardless of how charitable we're being, avoid concluding that she jumped to conclusions. I mean, I know it would be an unusual sight out in the great Northwest. My family is from the Northwest. That there's pagan country. Here in the upstate of South Carolina, for good or ill, every third pickup truck and every other corner house has a Confederate flag on it. But that's all the more reason to just do a double take. Just double check. One does not normally see a Confederate flag in suburban Seattle. Instead of jumping to conclusions, maybe I should circle around and make sure that I did in fact see a Confederate flag in suburban Seattle, regardless of what it means. Okay. Without getting into, so the Seattle Times drove by, blah, blah, it was, you know, they realized the Norwegian flag, they interviewed the dude, they asked Rebecca Morris what she had to say. They didn't really, at least they didn't publish them really pressuring her for any answers, but they certainly wrote a story that kind of exposed her a little bit as someone who jumped the gun. So Rebecca Morris's response when she's told is, "Are you kidding me?" She said she had even looked up the Confederate flag online, and it sure looked to her like the flag on that corner. Like, who doesn't know what the Confederate flag looks like? Like, exactly. Like, if you don't know the number of stars, fine. But what American adult doesn't know, couldn't just draw the Confederate flag? I mean, that's a crazy amount of ignorance. Well, it does look like the Norwegian flag, she says. Maybe that's the story. We're so stressed by all things political that we see things that aren't there. Yeah, so that is part of the story. And a great part of the story is, well, I mean, this ongoing conversation and reaction that's been happening about the Confederate flag, but that's not what I'm here to talk about. What I'm here to talk about is the great tragedy in this story. I'm here to talk about the fact, tea cozies, they're the best, but they make the handles hot, so then you have to pick up the handle of the teapot with the tea cozy. Folks, she didn't want to knock on his door. She was willing to write into a newspaper, but didn't want to knock on the door. And what's more, she found that such normal behavior that she wrote, but of course, I don't want to knock on their door. Of course, obviously, I don't want to knock on the door and ask them some questions before I denounce them as the thought criminals they are. It's frightening on so many levels. First of all, I mean, dehumanization is that first step, right? I mean, there's no more engagement. There's no more conversation. There's no more neighborliness. So, the people around you are just human-shaped silhouettes. Your reality is just what's inside your head. And you don't want to have a bad dream. You don't want to go talk to people who aren't like you. It's also frightening because there's this kind of, this woman is not a millennial, but there's this more and more common supposition that is most talked about is emerging in millennials, which is this unwillingness to confront or speak to those you disagree with, including those who are evil, those that you're sure are evil. Now, I'm all for the destruction of evil. The people are afraid to speak to evildoers. People are afraid to confront evildoers. They want other people to do it for them, right? They want to call the police, they want to call the government, they want to call a newspaper, because it's too disruptive of their precious peace to have an awkward conversation in verifying the facts or verifying an opinion, or even, dare we say it, crusading most righteously. It's what we call a crying shame. Of course, I didn't want to go knock on their door. I am sure that someone as concerned with the display of the Confederate flag in a residential neighborhood, ooh, there go the cats, would be most concerned, on paper at least, with the unity of the country, and grieved over the political and social polarization in this country. And yet unwilling to knock on a door, which shows us that a great many people in this country simply want to shut down dissenting voices. They don't want union. They want a monolith. They want all voices that they disagree with shut down. No harmony, just unison. No harmony, just unison. So you, dear viewer, I urge you to be the one who knocks. Be a person who knocks on doors and has some conversations for the love of God. Knock on some doors. Have some conversations. The peace of Christ be upon you.